busy. How are you, Sherry?
I'm good. How about you?
Yeah, a little crazy. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Looking forward to spring too.
My husband will go.
Very well.
When you get going, we'll be all night.
I like that. Can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I know it's very, very cold. This is our first of two Board of Ed budget workshops. And what we're going to do is go through the budget. Jerry's going to present some questions to us, and then after we go through it, the board will ask questions if they have any, and then at the end we'll open it up to the audience in case any of you have any questions. Okay? Wait, do you want to start? Do you want to recognize?
I did. Jody, I want to join you in saying thank you to our elected town officials who are out here this evening. We appreciate it. I can tell you earlier this morning it seemed balmy in comparison to other days. Right now, I'm not so sure I really want to walk outside to go back to my car. It's rather cool. So if we could pass that along.
I'd like to thank our teachers and administrators for coming out tonight, too.
And we have lots
and our board members.
So good evening, everybody. Just as a reminder to everyone, we are videotaping our workshops. Our budget tomorrow will be posted on our website as well as all of the PowerPoint presentations. And if you have any questions that pop up between now and our next workshop, we greatly appreciate you emailing them to us. That also goes to any of our town officials and members of the public. And we'll kick off our second workshop with really any updates that come out of tonight, any research that you're asking us to do. I also want to just mention that this budget really is a working copy. I'm sure you've found a typo or two, and there may be a couple of mistakes here and there, and that's really part of the workshop process. So please don't be bashful about calling to our attention any of the errors that maybe you might have picked up. So I'd like to start first by acknowledging the teamwork that went into the development of this budget. Our administrative team worked long and hard in putting together a proposal that really meets the needs of the students here in the Waterford Public Schools, the central office staff, and really a lot of the grunt work in the production of this document. Input from the board as we met during the fall season and talked about priorities and assumptions. Input over the last few years from our RTM and Board of Finance, as well as from our staff and from our parents. And you will see that we have a couple of elements within this proposed budget that really is a result of the evaluations, the surveys that we gave to our parents, asking them for feedback about the Waterford Public Schools, and we'll highlight those for you as well. So where I'd like to begin is really setting a context for a review and analysis of this proposed budget. The lens with which we used to really develop this particular budget was to really be sure that we maintain the tradition of excellence, because we have an expectation of excellence within the Waterford Public Schools. And we know that the very best school districts in our country are those that are innovative, and they really try to think about the next level of work, the continuous improvement. But just as important as those two particular rings that really drove the development of this budget is also doing this in a financially prudent manner, so that we really practice fiscal responsibility throughout as we develop this particular budget. And if you took a look at page Roman numeral 4, I guess that was called it, little I, little v, these are the budget assumptions. And we spent some time at a meeting in the fall, and this really guided our administrative team in the development of this particular fiscal plan. We said as a board that it would be important that we be very cost effective, that we avoid entertaining costs wherever possible, that we really value class size, and we know that the smaller the class sizes, in particular in the primary grades, that it makes an instructional difference, and it gives our students a great head start in their educational careers. We also talked about that we want to continue to improve as a school system, and we do that primarily here in Waterford through our curriculum renewal process, as well as our professional development and training, and those were important values for this board. We're going to be in the first year of our next technology plan, and we have a significant investment in technology, and we wanted to be sure that we were supporting technology as an important instructional tool within our schools. You notice in the back from pages 100, I believe, to 124, there are more than 250 mandates that we need to address as a public school system here in Connecticut, and it's very important that these mandates are part of our budget. And I'll just remind us, there are a couple that they're funded. Most of them are unfunded, and the remaining are underfunded. So the local taxpayer predominantly absorbs those mandates. When Kathy Ballone gets to share the special education budget at our next workshop, one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that we do have some of our students that require some very specialized educational services that occur outside of the Waterford Public Schools. The state does provide us with some financial relief, keyword, some financial relief. And this budget is built on the 70% funding for excess costs. And Kathy will go into greater detail when we do present the special education budget. Also, in looking at the consumables within the budget, we worked with a guideline of 2.75% consumer price index. You will notice in many cases we're below that. In a couple of other areas we needed to be above that. We also have a significant investment in beautiful facilities. We also need to be extremely mindful of safety, not only for our students but for our staff and anyone that visits our schools. So it's really important that we address a very strong preventative maintenance approach, as well as making sure that each of our schools is very, very safe. We also have 6 bargaining groups, and we have approximately 400 employees here in Waterford, and it's really important that we include the costs associated with their contracts. Also, we do receive some aid, and we need to apply all grants to the budget. And lastly, and just as important as anything that's up there, we can't lose sight of the reason why we're here, and that's really educating the whole child. And that's part of the theme in this year's budget, and that's really keeping in sight what matters most, and that's our students here in the Waterford Public Schools. So the board adopted some priorities that really guided us in the development of this budget, ensuring that we have appropriate class sizes, that we also really work at promoting, in particular, our high school programs, so that we're retaining students and having this be the best choice for their secondary education. And so that's been a high priority for this particular board. We also embarked on an instructional coaching model over the last couple of years, and if you recall, in the current budget, we expanded that. And what we want to do is sustain that instructional coaching approach that we have in the areas of language arts, math, and technology, but also our intervention approach for those areas that students need additional support. So we want to hold on to the work that we've been doing over the last few years. It's also critical for us, with our investment with professional development, that we have high-quality training for our staff. There are a number of mandates that we've been asked to embrace and to implement, and what we really need to do is really set our staff up well for success, to build their competence and confidence, and that comes through training. We also talked to the board in the fall about the importance of expanding the elementary art opportunity. If you recall, 4 years ago, we needed to reduce the art experience at the elementary level. And we've been waiting for the opportune time, looking at when it's affordable, and you'll see that proposed in the FY16 budget. We also needed an additional electrician. We have one electrician that basically works 28 hours of the 24 each and every day, 7 days a week. As Jay presents the buildings and grounds budget in our second workshop, we have many projects that we support on the town side as well as the board side, and having one electrician is just not enough, and this is time to really address that area of concern. So I want to spend a minute or two on just talking about need versus want. When we met, I think we had 3 different meetings with the Long Range Fiscal Planning Committee. We really talked about, in the design of all budgets within the town of Waterford, that we really take a look at it, at each budget being developed as a needs-based versus it would be nice to have. So here's the approach that we took. We know that we have a need to provide transportation for all students. We also know that our buses have a capacity of 65 students. So when you look at our transportation budget, we've really worked very, very hard to address that particular need in a very cost-effective way. And I'm going to share that in just a moment. When you look at the enrollment at a particular school, you may see that the need is we need to have 3 sections of grade 2. You do the math, you can come up with a 3. The board adopts a curriculum. You need to have the resources in order to teach that curriculum. So that really pushed us in the needs category. A want in regards to transportation, well, if we added 4 buses, maybe we could have only 50 students on a bus. Now, I'm also going to tell you that we don't have 65 students on every bus because, first of all, it doesn't make sense. The bus run might be extended by another 15 or 20 minutes when you look at the geography of Waterford and would have youngsters on the bus way too long. But our goal is to maximize that fleet of buses as best we can. A want, we may want to add a few extra field trips. I'm going to tell you in this budget, we have a few extra field trips. And both at the middle school and the high school, that will be shared with you when those 2 schools present. Because we feel that it could border on the need, but technically we'd probably say that's a want. But I will tell you that that's in the budget. We may want to expand the after-school activities programs and some of our sports. I would tell you that you're going to see that in the budget at both the elementary and the middle school level. And we would say they may fit in the want category. But our goal was really to look at every single line item in this budget and be able to say, is this a need or a want? And I would tell you basically on these 2 hands, that's all there is from a want perspective. It's probably less. It's predominantly all in the needs column. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as we built this budget. Level funding. That was another component of our discussion with the Long Range Fiscal Planning Committee. And what we talked about as a team representing all of the boards, the RTM, town officials, Board of Finance, Board of Education, is that we wanted to be able to design a fiscal plan that really provided the same level of service in the upcoming year that we're currently providing this year. And so we really spent a lot of time in that committee really discussing, so what do we mean by level service? So for us as an administrative team, as we designed and built this budget, we said we want to be able to provide the same service next year as we're providing this year, but we want to go a step further. If we can do it more efficiently, or contain costs associated with it and still maintain that level of service, then that's a win for the town and it's a win for the board. So let me give you a couple of examples. When you look at this budget in the area of school transportation, we have a contract with our bus company, and it's a 3% increase for next year. When you look at the transportation budget, you see a decrease in transportation. And that's really a result of the work that we've done in the area of special education with our regional approaches with transportation, the use of our 4 vans, as well as the way we're routing our regular ed buses around town. So we have applied the concept of efficiency definitely with school transportation. When you look at health insurance, this is our 2nd consecutive year that we have a significant decrease in our expenses for health insurance. That didn't just happen by mistake. That's a result of our negotiations with all of our bargaining groups. And our bargaining groups have been very willing to work with us with this really, quite frankly, this big elephant in the room. And so we're providing the same level of service based upon the contract, but we're actually able to contain and reduce the costs related to health insurance. The other insurances with liability, property, and insurance for our students involved in activities, we're going to provide the same level of service next year, but it's going to be anywhere from a 5 to an 8% increase in those line items. No change in service, but the market with our contracts with liability and property insurance shows an increase of 5 to 8%, something beyond our control, and we bid that alongside of the town, and that's the increase. And that's how we approach level funding. So we're providing the same level of service next year. In many areas of the budget, the cost has actually been reduced, and in other areas, the cost has increased. So that was an important approach for us to take. So the Long Range Planning Committee shared that doesn't mean that you have to spend 2%, but let's really kind of target that as a target, a cap, if you will. And I can tell you, when Bob and I sat at that meeting, we didn't think it was doable. We really didn't think it was doable. We voiced that concern. We said it might be 2.5%, it might be 3%. It all depends where we end up with insurance and a couple of other things. But we said we're going to do the very best we can, and we're going to bring you a needs-based budget. It might be above 2, it might be below. A 1% increase would represent about a $448,000 increase. Where we are in our proposal that we're giving you this evening, we show the budget increasing by 1.53%, or $686,063 over the current level of funding. So what's the reason why the budget is increased? So when you hear the term drivers, those are changes, those are increases to the budget. So again, thinking about the contracts that we have for our 400 employees, your certified salaries are increasing by almost $341,000. Your support salaries, just under $213,000. So those represent our contractual obligations. Here's what we didn't know a year ago when we were sitting with you on the budget, what was going to happen in the world of electricity. You've certainly felt it at your home. We're going to feel it big time on the municipal and board side next year. That's almost 0.5% of this budget increase in the area of electricity. We have 12 retirees this year, so contractual obligation, the sick leave payout. Looking at maintenance, repair, and supplies, as Bob goes into greater detail, you're going to see that that's basically a reassignment of financial obligations to some different line items so that we can better track. However, when you go through the line items, you see an increase of approximately $84,000. Tuition, and this is probably the smallest increase in my tenure here as a superintendent, and that's predominantly related to some increases with some out-of-district placement for our students with special needs. Workman's compensation, we have a contract with the town, and we're looking at approximately a 12% increase. FICA, that's connected to the salary increase, so that's a legal obligation. So if you just look at this first column, there's very little control that we have over any of those increases. And I would say that's pretty much the same over here in column 2. You have an increase with the retirement incentive, that's a contractual obligation for the 12 retirees. Your instructional contracted services. So we outsource a teacher for the visually impaired. We also provide adult education services for the community of Waterford. That's what that increase will be next year. The propane increase isn't for additional usage, it's market. It's based on the market. Here's the property insurance increase that I talked about a little while ago. The other supplies really predominantly relates to reassigning certain line items in the budget, a reallocation, so that we can better track those particular expenses. Here's your 5% in the liability, and all other line items add up to about a $541 increase. So you can see this is what the increase would be before we really put together our efficiencies and our containments on the previous slide. This is well over 2%, and we have a budget of 1.53% at this point in time. So we talked about how do we get better as a school system? How do we continue the good work that we're doing? So within this budget, we have an increase in the area of professional development, And what's really important is that we support our staff with the initiatives that the board has taken, as well as the initiatives that have been handed by the state. We have a cycle for curriculum renewal for 6 years, and Craig will talk about the work that lies ahead for us next year. Associated with the new curriculum also comes resources, the expansion of elementary art. We have an increasing ELL population, that's English language learners. We can no longer do it with one staff person. That population continues to grow, and we need to address that need. The board has identified the need to initiate a strategic planning process in the upcoming year. Again, having the investment that we have in these new facilities, it's important that we maintain them well. And then the last item that I have up here really came as a result of the surveys that we did over the last 2 years with our parents at both the elementary and the middle school level. So we have a modest expansion of some after-school activities in those two areas. Emerging needs that we've known about, but we just haven't been able to afford them. And what we've identified is the cost of an additional electrician. The equipment here relates to the technology plan, and that's an additional amount of money in order to fund the rejuvenation of the technology at both Oswald Gotcha and Clark Lane Middle School. The instructional supply increase all relates to supporting the curriculum, as well as the texts and the library books. We've completed an audit of all of our libraries within the district, and Craig will highlight that for you. We do have a modest increase in some software. You'll also notice if you compare the two lists from last year's budget book to this year's, the upcoming year's proposed budget, you will see some different software items. We've eliminated some and we've replaced others, and we also have some increased fees for a few. The other purchase services, The other purchase services really relates to some increased costs with our financial software, as well as a contractual obligation for uniforms for our maintenance and custodial staff. What our elementary schools predominantly have done, where you see this increase in conferences and travel, they've reduced other accounts in order to meet that need. And we've proposed an additional $5,000. So when you think about these emerging needs, you're looking under a $200,000 increase to address these particular needs. Here's how we've gone about trying to reduce and contain the costs within our budget. We're looking at reducing the health insurance line item by over $423,000. This is a result of our negotiations. It's also a result of better claims trends, and I think that's important to note. And I'll also tell you we're looking at a 3.79% increase in our health insurance, but within the budget you're seeing a reduction. And the reduction is a result of the design in our plan changes with all 6 of our bargaining groups. The reduction with professional and technical services relates to the staffing that we have in our autistic program, as well as reducing some of our costs for special ed services at our magnet schools. This again continues to be a great success story, and Bob will highlight that. Not too long ago we were spending well over $1 million for special education transportation, and that's been significantly reduced. And again, just to be fully transparent, this is all about market right in here. This is all about trend, but this is why we're able to reduce. We're able to reduce unemployment because of just the trending. We didn't do anything different for sewer service. Again, we've just looked at our last 4 years of average and just said this is where we think we can be so we can reduce money there. Ed will talk about the E-rate, and there's a reduction in communications. And I'm proud to say we're nearing the end of school construction here in Waterford, and we're able to reduce the school building account by $500. So that's well over 1% of a budget that we've been able to reduce through some containment, as well as really reflecting the market for some of these goods and services. I think it's important to keep in mind that we have a strong partnership with the town with a number of shared services, and although this isn't quantified in the budget, this is an efficiency for both the town and for the board. We share a human resources director. Ed is shared with the town and the board. and some of its staff is shared as well. Jay and his team also service the town. Our auditorium manager was Shane. He services both the board and the town. The printing services are here in the basement here at Town Hall. The board purchased the equipment. The town pays for the salary. We try to bid and purchase as much as we can together. And then the relationship that we have with these other organizations in town, the police department, the Youth Service Bureau, our Recreation and Parks Department, and our relationship certainly during the recent snowstorms with Public Works. We couldn't have done it without them. So these are all, I think, really strengths of the relationship that we have with the town here in Waterford. I also want to put on the table, because you know that each July as a central office team we meet and we take a look at. So what are some of the areas that we really want to invest some time in researching? And sometimes it takes more than a year to get to that particular place. So when Kathy gets to present the special ed budget, and we've shared it over the past year, we see a breakthrough in this particular area, and it's actually being reflected in the budget, and maybe in FY17 and they have some additional savings. And that's the transitional program for our 18 to 21-year-olds. We want to continue to promote the health savings account, the high deductible health plan with all of our bargaining groups. We started with our teacher negotiation, instituting a wellness program come this July. We want to continue to expand that. We know it's hard to quantify today, but we know down the road that that's going to be a savings for the town of Waterford. We will continue to bid our energy. We've started a conversation with solar energy, and I think that's a conversation that has to happen town-wide. How can we reduce our energy costs? And I think we need to do that as a partnership. We want to explore other print management opportunities. We also want to be thinking about Clark Lane perhaps down the road with doing a conversion to natural gas. We predominantly heat that building with oil. And Bob's going to highlight really a component that's innovative for us. We really want to be looking at a reverse bid auction for energy. And that's something that we want to reach out to the town and see if they want to join us in that process. I think it's important to, we frequently kid about, so how are the Joneses doing? And I think it's important, we're one of 24 what we call DIRG D districts. And that's a district that's comparative to Waterford, socioeconomically. And when you look here, we have 22 of the districts displayed. Waterford has the smallest increase in its education budget of all of DIRG D. You're looking at a 0.73 2 years ago, a 0.55 this year. If this proposed budget was approved as is, you're looking at over 3 years less than 4% as a budget. Let's take a look at where we are in southeastern Connecticut. And so again, as you look at our neighbors, you see Waterford over the last 2 years with the lowest budget increase on the education side. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. So as we roll out the budget publicly tonight, and you can find those two tables on both pages 87 and 88, and there's a little bit more detail in the appendix related to both of those charts. Here's where we are right now. East Lyon's looking at just under a 5%. You're looking at Ledyard proposing a budget of about 3.5%, Stonington over 6%. And tonight, I'm presenting to you a budget of a 1.53% increase. And the reason I present that, I think we can always learn from our colleagues. I know in other jobs that I've had where I've seen districts actually have lower numbers, I've always been curious and want to know why and learn from them. And I can tell you that we have a number of the districts asking us, so why? How are you able to do this? So I think we now have a nice partnership where we're sharing quite a bit of information across district lines. But having said all of that, I think what's most important is that sometimes we overstress the fiscal responsibility. And I just want to assure you that that's in the forefront of our minds as we develop a budget. But I have to tell you, which comes number one, is academic excellence. And we need to be absolutely positive that we're providing a program that really prepares our students to meet the demands once they graduate from Waterford High School. And so that's the driver for us. The other piece is, in order to get to that, we need to really take an innovative approach in the way we design our programs as well as the way we finance our programs. And so I want to conclude by saying this administrative team, with the support of the board and other boards in town and hearing from our staff as well as our parents, our goal throughout this entire development of this fiscal plan for FY16 was to really keep in sight what matters most and what matters most for our students. So what we're planning to do this evening is Bob's going to provide an overview of the district-wide services, and that's many, many of the counts. In fact, Bob's got the heavy lifting tonight. Bob's going to be presenting 89% of the budget, the funding of the budget, because really, as you take a look at it, there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room that we have. Greg is going to give you an overview of the staffing plan and the instructional program for FY16. Ed's going to conclude tonight with presenting the technology budget, and then we want to open it up for discussion and questions, as well as along the way. So before I turn this over to Bob, are there any questions that you have in regards to the approach that we took in the development of this budget?
On the page with the needs and the wants,
Yeah.
you mentioned that the budget included the extra field trip and the new sport in the budget,
Yeah.
but I can't remember if you included adding the 4 buses in the budget.
No, that was just an
was
example.
not, okay.
That was just an example. We might want to have more buses so that we have fewer students on the bus, but we're going with the need. Okay. So, Mr. 89%.
Okay, before I start, I just want to say thank you for coming, and I'm very glad to be here tonight because we're able to be here tonight because it's not snowing. And I love snow, but I've had enough. Jerry touched on a lot of things that I'm going to touch on as well, so I'll try not to be redundant, and I'll go into detail on the areas where I think it's appropriate. I'll also mention some things that Craig and Jay and others will talk about, but I'll take the detail for them. So with that said, this budget does provide funding at the same level of service that we have this year. And when Terry and I did meet with the long-range planning committee, I echoed the same sentiments that Terry had. I really didn't think we could get to 2%. So it took a lot of effort by a lot of people, and I'm very happy to say that we're there. This budget does reflect market conditions, especially in the area of utilities, electricity, propane, fuel oil. We have contractual obligations, especially in large budget areas, salaries, transportation, and insurance. And we always try to use competitive bids and try to be as innovative as possible, but yet still follow best practice for each respective area. Jerry mentioned the reallocation of certain budgets, and I did this in 3 areas, and I didn't do it to make more work and try to confuse people, but I did it because it makes sense. And I think if I spend some time up front explaining what these differences are, it might alleviate and eliminate a lot of questions that you might have had going through the budget, like, is this a new $45,000 account, or why did this budget change by 30%? The 3 areas where this mainly happened was in buildings and grounds. Jay Miner and myself, we got together and went through all of his accounts, and he has 20 accounts, not counting salaries. And in the end, all of his accounts that total about $385,000 are going up 2%. But yet when you look at individual components, you'll see this going up 30% and so on. So I have detail on that. The copier account is in the 430 and 730 account. That's actually a budget decrease of about 9%. But when you go through the repair account, you're going to see some big increases percent-wise. And community use is actually going down by about $11,000 this year. But the way I allocated the funds makes certain accounts appear to have disproportionate increases. So I'm going to go through those slides. I just want to highlight a few things. That's a very busy slide, but that's the Jay's building and ground account. Big takeaway from it is down on the bottom on your handout. You see it's a 2% increase, or just under $8,000. What we did mostly was affected the top line item called maintenance supplies. That was a $150,000 line item in the budget. And there was a lot of stuff that belonged in your own individual account. Those new accounts are down on the bottom. We have supplies for air filters at $25,000. We have broke out electrical supplies, plumbing supplies, and uniforms. Uniforms is not a new expense. The air filters is not a new expense, but with the new buildings we now have we use a lot of filters. So Jay and I, when we went through these accounts, were very painstaking to go through everything. We didn't want to create more accounts than we needed, but we did this to provide better operational management and be able to track expenses and see where they are. So that's the big takeaway. If you go through the budget, you'll see these large increases and decreases, but in the end, all of the maintenance accounts only went up 2%. The next area was the copiers and equipment repair budgets. Again, these show up in the 430 line item, which is the repairs, and the 730 line item, copier replacements. These budgets combined are actually going down by almost $14,000 and 9.3%. What this does is it reflects where we actually spend the money, the way we do business. So we've actually eliminated that $52,000 line item that showed up in the past as your last line item in the budget, and overall there's a net reduction. And community use. If you all remember, this is an allocation that the town does based on the hours of community use that park, the park provides to the town. Data is 2 years old that was used to come up with this calculation, so we actually had a decrease of $11,000.
Bob, could you just go back to that copier replacement?
Sure.
We're no longer replacing copiers?
No, that's...
I know you said you shifted things around,
we've
but...
been leasing the copiers, so that line item was misnamed. We don't own the copiers. We haven't owned them for several years. I don't know.
Well, historically, if I may, back probably now 4 business managers ago, we had purchased all new copiers one year, and it really was a spike to our budget, probably exceeded 1% increase just on that. And we decided from then on to phase in and do sort of like replacements through a lease. And that's when this line came about. And what we have been doing over the course of that span of time, and that's when we had 7 schools, 5 elementaries, is that we look at the needs of the copiers. We've been replacing machines, and through renegotiations of those leases, we're seeing that we don't need this amount of money because we are reducing our footprint in that respect. And so we're doing away with this copy replacement. We have every copier on a lease, and that was the way that we're going to continue to operate business. But in the recent past, we've been using kind of a little bit from that account to offset the other one. So what Bob wisely did was to just put, as he said, the money where it's being spent, and to kind of take away this unneeded now expense.
And the lease cost appears elsewhere?
Okay, go ahead.
The lease cost is actually in the 430 line item. It's labeled copiers / equipment repair. All of the lease expense are within that line item. All of the usage fees are in there.
Okay, I'm with you.
Repairs. Going forward, it might be better for me to move that out into a different line item, but I didn't want to get too wild with it this year.
This now accurately reflects our copy costs.
Okay, back to community use. We actually have a slight decrease in the allocation to the Board of Ed budget of $11,000 or 3.4%. Previous way those funds were allocated was on a fixed percentage. In other words, the allocation for salary expense or the credit to the salary account was fixed at a certain percentage. Utilities was fixed at a certain percentage, and so on. So when I looked at the allocation and formula, question, why are we allocating it when we know what the salary expense is? We know it's 3 custodians, do the right amount. We know what FICA is, do the right amount. So that's what I did. So this is a 1-year thing, and that's a very busy slide, but the 3 areas that were affected most were salaries. They went down by $47,000. FICA went up by $10,000 because there was no allocation before. Electricity went up by $35,000, and maintenance and repair line item went down by $26,000. Please keep in mind that this is strictly an accounting exercise. Electricity expense didn't go down or up. This is just where we apply the credit. So it's done based either on, we know now what the direct cost is, or the cost that is allocated is done on a percent of total. So why not make it more realistic?
When there's extra things going on at the high school, there's several events, and it's through Rec and Parks, do we put extra custodians on, or do we just have a set amount for each school, for after school?
Well, I know Jake can touch on that, but my understanding is we try to, when it's possible, and advance notice, put extra staff on. I know certain functions like varsity basketball games, the boys and girls need to have a dedicated custodian. When things happen on the weekend, there are contractual obligations that prevent more people being scheduled. We have to get into overtime situation. So, Jay wants to add to that? Or?
Yeah, we have requests for days if we have like a minimal term or what, multiple things within here.
But if I'm not saying if the school is using it, but if Rec and Parks is using it, so you do the same?
Yeah.
And they maintain all the record keeping for this. We don't maintain that. We get all of this comes from Rec and Park over to the town finance office, and then Bob sits with Mariana.
So that's the end of my reallocation of budget adjustments. So if you're going through the budget detail and you find some account that falls within those ranges, if you refer back to this document, you can probably see that it's really not a budget increase. So now to the 89%. These 5 or 6 items are the real big ticket impact items. Salaries, the majority of which are fixed by contract. The overall budget increase is 2.2%, and between certified and non-certified support staff, the increase is about $617,000. Health insurance, this was a large decrease of 7.4%, $423,000. Electricity, all of our schools are under contract right now. Those contracts expire in June of 2015. Generation rates are extremely unfavorable right now, and they're projected to remain high. If I take out these factors for community use, our electrical increase is really at 24%. That's the gross increase, and it would be about $243,000. Transportation, the contractual increase is 3%. Workers' compensation, 12%. That's in partnership with the town, as is the property and liability at 5%.
Bob, excuse me, for the salaries, now because 12 people are retiring, do you think that we might be able to save some money on that?
Yes, Greg will get into that.
Oh, okay.
What we've done is the 12 who retired were at the top of the scale.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
It's all factored in, Jody.
Oh, it's factored in.
It's all in there.
Okay.
You'll see back in the Appendix A, the turnover savings as a result. That's one of the efficiencies, I think, somewhere in the $48,000 to $50,000 range.
That's correct.
Yeah. So that all of the retirees have been factored in.
This slide is really tailored to the budget. This is the 89% that Sherry was making reference to. Craig will go into detail on salaries and SPTs and positions, but that's a big number at $28 million. Followed next by benefits at $7 million, transportation at $2.3 million. Overall, $686,000 is the total budget increase. These 8 items account for 71% of $487,000. It's interesting to look, if you look at the right-hand 2 columns, this year these items are 89% of the budget. Last year they were 89.3%. So you haven't had growth in terms of the overall budget in these areas. If you look at the areas of salaries and benefits, This year it's 78.3% of the budget. A year ago it was 78.8%. So these items have not been growing disproportionately in reference to the rest of the budget. Employee benefits, the details for this you can find in your budget book between pages 24 and 27. Overall health insurance is the largest expense. We are self-insured and have been for a couple of years now. This overall budget decrease, as Jerry mentioned, is due to aggressive negotiations and better than expected claims. And again, insurance premiums to employees will go up by 3.79%. The expense for life insurance and LTD, long-term disability, is based on contractual provisions, basically staying flat. Social Security is based on budgeted wages that are subject to FICA and Medicare tax. So that's a straight calculation. Continuing with employee benefits, reimbursement amount, that's fixed, no change. Based on fractional allowances. Unemployment compensation is basically a best guess in recent history. You can see in 2012-13 it was about $76,000. Based on where we're trending, we felt fairly comfortable that we could take $10,000 out of the budget. So in essence, we didn't roll the budget over and they just keep it the same. So we've made that budget adjustment there. Workers' compensation, Kerman is our carrier. We have a 3-year agreement in collaboration with the town, and the agreement is for a 12% increase. As you'll see on the chart, it's going up 8.1%. The reason for the difference is I base the increase based on our actual bill plus 12% and adjustment for annual payroll audit. I didn't just take the existing budget and multiply it by 12%. Unused sick leave and retirement incentives, those are based on contractual obligations. The fixed payout needs to reflect the retirees who as a result of December 1st. So combined, employee benefits is just a shade under $7 million, but overall it's going down by $271,000 or 3.8%. And again, this is a summary of employee benefits with the two big drivers going in the negative. Health insurance down $423,000 and unemployment down 10%, $10,000, resulting in 3.7 and 3.8%. Transportation, pages 31 and 32 in the budget book. We're in the 4th year of a 5-year contract. Rates go up by 3% each year. But when we do the transportation budget, review the bus routes, things will change from year to year based on need. Fortunately, we've been able to stay within the parameters of that increase. Jerry did mention the gains that have been made from special ed transportation over the year as a result of student placements, proactive efforts on the part of Kathy Malone and her staff within special ed, regionalization, better bidding, and the implementation of the van service. 2012 special ed expenses, and that's an actual number, not a budget, is $956,000. This year's budget request is $705,000. That's a decrease of $250,000. I think that's a significant decrease. Significant. And the vans, just today, and I don't think Jim is even aware of this afternoon, another use of the vans, we're sending 3 students on the Rubik Cube team to Concord, Mass. To compete in a regional contest, and we made those arrangements today for you. So it's been a great service. We received a magnet school transportation grant. This year the grant estimate is $107,200. That's basically equal to our transportation cost. That's another change that we see in the budget detail, that is showing the amount of the expected grant. In previous years it was buried into the cost and netted out, so you never actually saw what the grant was. We received $1,300 per student as a cap, so if your transportation costs in magnet school exceed $1,300 per student, you don't get any more. All you get is $1,300. So we're basically right at the cap level. We do about 86 students per year. Diesel fuel is budgeted at $2.90 per gallon. and regular gas at $2.80 per gallon. The diesel fuel is at a fixed contract, and gas is at a contract that we have 6 more months to go on. I'm going to spend a little more time on utilities, especially in the area of electricity. You'll find this detail on pages 56 through 65. There's a whole bunch of charts and graphs. The big ticket item here is electricity. It shows that $1,183,000 in the budget of $209,000 increase. But if you factor out the community use impact, it's really a 24% increase and $243,000. The other utility expenses are important, but I'm not going to spend as much time on those. I'm going to spend a little more time on electricity. This is a busy chart, but this is actual electricity usage by school. I'd like you to focus on the red numbers down on the bottom. That's what the actual rates are per kilowatt hour. And you can see it's been very constant. 2012-13, we were 13.8 cents. 13-14, 14 cents. That's what the budget was this year in the forecast. It's a little bit higher because of the things that's going on at the high school. We're a big user of electricity, and it's been fairly constant. We use 7 million kilowatt hours. That's because of our geothermal usage and conversion from fossil fuels to that technology, and that's been a big budget saving. The rates at the bottom of the 14 cents per kilowatt hour, that's a combination of the generation and the delivery services. Your home residential bill is about 50-50 split. Here we've had the benefit of the great contract. We were at 7.5 cents, so it almost was a 50-50 split, not quite. You've heard me say this before in the past, but electricity for Waterford is really a penny business, and pennies do matter. And 1 penny change in price, up or down, has a $70,000 impact on your budget. So whatever we can do to make that rate go down by a penny or use fewer kilowatt hours has a big difference. As I mentioned earlier, the supply contract expires on June 30th, 2015, so we have to do something going forward before the start of next year. Right now, the high school, we entered into a contract for 7 months that started with December. The best rate we could get from TransCanada was 11.635 cents per kilowatt hour. The reason being, we were on last resort rate. We couldn't incorporate Waterford High School as part of the contract 2 or 3 years ago because it was under construction and no one would include it. And they didn't know how much usage it would be. So when CLMT announced their last resort rates, the rates going up to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. It would have been a financial disaster if we didn't enter into that contract. So even though that was a significant increase, we saved significant money by doing it. As you know, CLMT announced new rate increases for residential rates, 26%. Standard offer, 12.69 cents. This is not unique to Connecticut. Rates in Western Massachusetts went up to 29%. National Grid in Rhode Island, 24%. Liberty in New Hampshire actually doubled, went up to 99%. United Illuminating went up 54%. And we entered into the contract with TransCanada. If we had not done that at the high school, the month of December we would have paid 16.5 cents. January would have been 20.8, 19.98 to 20 cents in February, and then it drops back to 12.5 in March. And that's only for the generation. You have the delivery cost on top of it. So this is a real high impact item. So what's Northeast Utilities doing to pipeline generation rates? Actually related to natural gas. 50% of our energy is used to produce electricity comes from natural gas. The regional pipeline that serves them is too small and it has pipeline limitations, so that's causing the problem. Northeast Utilities has 2 major initiatives to lower prices in the future. One is called Access Northeast, and the basic intent there is to double the size of the pipeline by increasing its capacity. They intend on doing this over the existing pipeline, they don't have to get any more easements if everything's in place. That's a joint project with Spectra and Iroquois Gas. The downside is their anticipated date of in-service is November of 2018. And that's a long ways away from this year's budget, and we might have delays to that, so it could go out beyond that. They have a second initiative that's going through New Hampshire. It's called the Northern Pass Project. If you're traveling in New England, you might see bumper stickers, no Northern Pass here. There's been a lot of resistance in New Hampshire. This project's been going on for 9 years. But they're finally at the point where it's going to become a reality. It's to bring low-cost energy from Hydro Quebec to New Hampshire and New England. It's a $1.4 billion project. Again, target date mid-2017.
The reason why Bob's taken the time to explain this because this is a long-term impact for us as a school system, big time. And so as we saw the handwriting on the wall, so to speak, we said we have to figure out a different way to do this. We have to do something different. Otherwise, for the next few years, that's what you're going to be talking about as your biggest driver in the budget. It's going to be electricity. So we've got a couple of thoughts that we want to float with the board that I think will be beneficial to us.
If we reached out to other communities to see if we could, because remember regionally we tried to do this with the other area towns. Have we tried to do this more recently, especially with the increased cost?
I haven't with other towns, but as I go through the next couple of slides, that might answer your question.
Yeah.
So what can Waterford do? Jay and I will engage with energy audits through KLP and their partners in an attempt to manage the energy and lower our usage. That's one avenue.
Well, but excuse me, with the high school though, Jay, maybe you could clarify this. I thought we were going to be more energy efficient.
Yeah. This is how can we be more than we are.
This is the next step. Right now, Waterford High School, because of Dave's efforts, will use less electricity this year than last year because of load management. And these are real numbers, next numbers. It's not an estimate. I compared the electric usage at the high school from last July through January 2014 and took it from the same period this year, July 2014 to January 2015. We have used 275,000 fewer kilowatt hours, and at the current contract rate of 11.635 cents, that translates into a $32,000 savings.
Good job, Jay.
So we're making the inroads in that way. So what can we do on the supply side? We want to try to get the most favorable contract possible on price, because $110 is $70,000. The broker we've been talking with has projected April as the best time frame. There's been some market movement where prices are coming down. Winter will be over. Natural gas won't be being used to heat, and he feels that's the best time. The traditional way of doing this is through a competitive bid with a broker. They solicit bids from 4 or 5 energy companies, and we pick the best one. We use PERMA services and have our contract through Bay State Energy out of Massachusetts. Another way, which is the innovation that Jerry was talking about, is to conduct a reverse online auction. This technology or service is only available to very large users of electricity. The threshold they look at is 5 million kilowatts and up, and because of our size, we qualify. So World Energy Solutions, which is an energy management company, and I've given you a handout in your packet, it's about 5 pages long. It describes what a reverse auction is. It has some information about the company. They offer this service, and we will likely broker with them to try it. These are some of their clients that have done this with. State of Connecticut, they had contracts in excess of 505 million kilowatt hours. GSA, Harlan, the federal government, has contracts for 285 million kilowatt hours. The VA, Bureau of Prisons, USDA, Pfizer, Procter & Gamble, really big players have used this technology, so we're going to give it a shot. So how does it work? Basically a reverse eBay auction for electricity. It's on a web-based platform that World Energy Solutions has developed. You address the savings from the supply end. And what this does is provides increased competition to bid on your electricity. By doing it this way, we'll probably get interest from 12 to 14 qualified companies, and they bid against each other. They have like a 2-hour window. We'll be able to sit and watch it online while they bid against each other. The participating suppliers see the lowest bid at any given time. It's real-time information. One of the ways you get a lower price is when a written offer is made by an energy company, there's always a time lag between making the offer and signing the contract, and that's when they have market risk. So this eliminates that, because if you decide to do the deal, it often happens within an hour. It's almost instantaneous. One of the beauties of this is the timestamp. It ensures that it's fair and competitive and nobody can cry foul. You have the expertise of World Energy Solutions working on your side. And if you don't like the results of the bid, you don't have to accept them. So we're going to explore this option and see if we can get much lower prices in the budget.
It's really the only way that we can reduce the cost of electricity. And so potentially by the time we get to the RTM, we may be able to reduce the budget line item for the electricity. But right now we're looking at a time frame of April. So that certainly would be after the Board of Finance, but it's definitely something that we need to explore. Otherwise, this is going to strangle us over the next couple of years.
So the potential we could have a significant cut, much like 2 years ago when Barry brought the dam program to the RTM at that time, and a $100,000 cut was implemented. World Energy also has about 4 or 5 minute video on their website. Take time to look at that. It's really educational. Other utilities. Water rate increase is projected at 3%. We'll actually see a decrease in the water and sewer budget, and that's primarily because of the water for high school. When we did last year's budget, we didn't have any baseline data on what service would be required at those facilities. We now have a year of experience and found that the budget last year was probably a little too high, so we've made a reduction there. Fuel oil, Park Lane Middle School is the only user of fuel oil, number 2 heating oil to heat the facility. $2.79 is our contract price, and we put in for 55,000 gallons. What we did this year, after learning from last year, we expanded our window in terms of a 4-year average of usage at the school. We felt that gave us a better baseline for fluctuations in temperature. Last year we ended up using over 60,000 gallons. Natural gas is used to heat the high school gymnasium, pool, and auditorium. We'll also see that budget reduced because of the influence of having real-time data at the high school. Propane budget is actually going up, but last year we were budget the actual price range from $1.56 in September up to $3.11 a gallon, so we were over budget. We budgeted propane at $2.25 a gallon. We haven't seen any of the price fluctuations. The recent delivery in January that we had came in at $1.34 a gallon, so we're doing well in that account. Contracted services, legal expense, we level funded at the same budget amount as this year. The DNA nursing contract provides nursing services to all of our schools. That's a 1.6% increase. The budget was based on DNA's new negotiated rates for their nursing time rate went up slightly. Nursing school aides stayed the same. So overall, that's an increase of 1.4%. Again, Jerry had mentioned that our insurance is capped by 5% with permit in collaboration with the town, and our other insurances is for the interscholastic sports and student activities. Other purchase services. If you travel, it's reimbursement based on trends using IRS guidelines. $8,000 increase that you see there. It really is not an $8,000 increase. That's a reallocation. $5,500 of that is from the uniforms, which previously was in the supply account. Communications, we have a decrease of $1,000 in postage. We middle school and high school are going to continue to expand their use of communications and through electronic media and sending to home as opposed to mailing. And advertising has a slight increase of $300. So in summary, the increases here, contractual obligations, market conditions, overall it's a 1.53 increase of $686,000. Significant savings and reductions in health insurance, transportation, continue to bid. We're hopeful that the reverse auction process will yield some significant savings for us.
Is there any board members have any questions for Bob?
Just back on that, it's intriguing, this about the reverse.
Yeah,
I'd like to read about that. That's excellent to get out in some ways. But how close were we to qualifying? There isn't any danger that
we use $7 million to allow.
Okay, so we've got a good little flexibility
Small
there.
business, they wouldn't even entertain.
Right. Very exciting. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
If I could, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the work that I hope you saw that Bob put into this particular section of the budget. We've really redesigned and reformatted some areas so that we can more accurately trend and reflect the real costs in this budget. So Bob's really put quite a bit of time into really analyzing it and kind of restructuring it for us. So really appreciate that work.
Okay, so for my presentation, please stop me along the way as we go through things. This first slide tells a lot, so let me take some time to explain it. And in your budget book, it can be found upon page 7. When we look at our current staffing, we have 260.8 million FTEs, or full-time equivalent employees. There's been a steady increase for the need for ELL, or English Language Learner Services. I can remember when I began as an administrator here in 1999, we had a half-time teacher providing service for about 15 children, and we currently have a full-time teacher servicing about 50 students this year. So
many languages.
And they're at different levels, right?
Yeah.
Grade levels.
So all schools, all 5 schools. Again, I think back to 1999. Our ELL population was being provided the majority of time at Cohandy School, and not much more. And now that's really expanded. So the thought by adding a half-time ELL teacher would be to have one person focus on the elementaries and one person focus on the secondaries, and it would be then affording us the opportunity to really meet the needs of the students at the different levels. Right now, the one teacher has some tutor support, but then of course the teacher is trying to orchestrate how that tutor support is also being provided, which impacts time.
Do they get so much time per student of their support? Or?
So yes, there's a screening, and based upon their level of English proficiency, they have different service times, and it's hard for one teacher to connect with all of our faculty. Additionally, we see through the curriculum renewal process that we would like to make a strategic increase in both the elementary and high school art. We have this would afford all of our elementary specials, art, music, PE, and library, to have an equal amount of hours of instruction, 34 hours of instruction a year. The high school increase would really afford us, in an upcoming renewal, which you'll see this spring, some opportunities to offer some digital art. As you recall, 4 years ago, we needed to make some significant reductions in staffing, and art was an area affected. So how do we make increases in staffing within a flat budget and a flat staffing? Through close analysis of class size district-wide, we were able to reduce 2 elementary classes, which I'll show you in the next slide. We do have 3 teachers within the elementary schools retiring, and we want to maintain 1 contingency in the budget, which we will return to the town as we have in the past if we don't need to deal with any hot spots in enrollment that emerge. So the net effect of the reduction would be 1 elementary classroom position. There are 3 high school math teachers retiring, and we were able to reduce a 0.67 math position at Waterford High due to the high school having some more efficiencies in their schedule. We also have 1 of our 4 elementary physical education teachers retiring, and when we look back, when we look at the PE needs and the APE, or adaptive physical education needs, we're able to reduce 0.73 from the elementary PE total staffing, and that would allow each physical education teacher in their building in each elementary school to provide extra support for students who need more time working, more time for the children who needs more working in their motor skills. I met with the Director of Special Services as well as the 3 elementary principals, and there was a unanimous consensus that this is the right direction to go. We really have 2 of our 3 PE teachers at less than full-time currently, and so we would basically be strategically adding some time to them. So overall, this means that we are recommending a 0.13 FTE decrease in overall district-wide staffing. We talk about instructional services further, and now I'm really going to page 8. We see that the entire certified staffing plan is really found on page 8. And pages 9 through 12 is really an accounting document which ensures that we have every staff member correctly budgeted for with the appropriate salary. So when Jody asked the question, have we considered the 12 retired teachers, we've budgeted for them with a replacement cost of a mid-year entry-level teacher, and we've netted off the costs for the sick leave payout and the retirement incentive. Pages 13 through 16 really show us a historical comparison compared to the proposed staffing for the areas I've listed in that slide. So you'll see administration, core academics, unified arts, our CTE, career and technical ed staff, academic support and special education teachers, and you'll see exactly where the FTE changes are occurring. Now if I can have you flip to page 98, this would kind of show a little bit more on class sizes. So on page 98, in looking at the top chart, you see FY15, that's this year, FY16 are our proposals, and we took into consideration the Board of Ed's budget assumptions, which really set the class size guidelines. And when we are developing these, we have looked at a 5-year trend in kindergarten, because as you know, kindergarten is the unpredictable one. So, if you ask me exactly, how I was able to pinpoint the kindergarten sections at all 3 schools, it was really a 5-year trend, and what's the average, and then what would if that average came through as a total, what would the class sizes be? So, with this, we have built in a contingency teacher into the budget to deal with any hot spots. You will see that really Oswegatchie 5th grade we are keeping an eye on. relative hotspot at this point in time. For the middle school, down below, our middle school class sizes really fell within the Board of Ed guidelines as well. And the high school, from 8th to 9th, we used a 3-year average to see about how many 8th graders do not choose Waterford High School. I know that much work has been done on a transition, but I haven't been able to figure out what number that would really quantify at. So this would be as if we hadn't done any extra transitions. So we may have a few more high school students returning from that number.
If I could interject just for a second, I think that's the value of having a contingency teacher. 3 of the last 4 years we've needed it. We needed to use it at Quaker Hill with a kindergarten enrollment at the beginning of the year, one of the years in 5th grade at Oswegatchie. So potentially, it could be at the elementary. Potentially, it might even be some additional staffing at the high school if more of our 8th graders remain here in Waterford. And the other piece is we've always said publicly that if we don't need that teacher, that's the dollar amount that's earmarked to be returned at the end of the year.
And there isn't any cutoff date, right? We have to accept anybody up to when school starts. So sometimes we don't know until before school starts.
That's a correct statement.
Now, in those kindergarten classrooms that have 20, is there going to be an 8 in those classrooms?
Yeah. So again, those are just an average prediction. So you're right. That's also a high spot, but I don't have a certainty because I'm really just taking a 5-year average. If that materializes, we would look at then what would the appropriate staffing support be. Okay?
Thank you.
If I can have you flip back to page 17, we can look at the non-certified support. And on page 17, you can see we're maintaining a flat staffing for all support areas, with the only addition, as Jerry mentioned earlier, would be an additional electrician. As you know, our maintenance staff provides not only support for the Board of Ed, but also for the town. And the electrician is needed for a vast amount of wiring projects, both mechanical and from a technology infrastructure standpoint. And so Jay will speak more about the electrician next week. If you look again at page 18, this has our entire support staffing plan on one page. And in full parity, 19 through 21, again, is the accounting of salaries and positions within there. And pages 22 and 23, again, is the historical comparison compared to our budget proposal for the areas of buildings and grounds, IT, admin, support staff, secretaries, paraprofessionals, student support staff, part-time school staff, and food service. Any questions on staffing?
Yeah, I got one here. Just on page 14, under career and technical. That's going down quite a bit, like our staffing there over the last few years. Is that normal in most schools, or like one business and finance teacher? Is that one teacher right there that we have?
That would be one teacher.
Seems low to me.
Well, you're right, and the board has a goal about personal finance, and as you'll see in an upcoming slide, Dave, our business and finance curriculum is going under review next school year. So we'll be looking at staffing just like this school year. Art went under review, and we're proposing some changes in our art.
So does that review all happen at once, the career and technical? Is that all under one?
Business and finance would be one, and then tech ed would be another. Both curriculums are going under review, as you'll see in a couple slides from now, starting this summer.
It would also be driven by course selection on the part of our students as well. So if we see some shifts or whatever, we should be able to adapt to those changes.
a relevant side note on the area of personal finance, our director of guidance is really looking at opportunities to maybe have a different use for maybe some of the advisory times to provide some education in that area as well as a complement. Any other questions before? So just from a curricular...
I just have, if I may, because it's just going back a little bit on the class size, and we talked about the reduction in the retirement in the math, and I didn't see anything with the class sizes at the high school. Just if you could just comfort us that the size, remember we watched, we had a little pattern in the high school with some of the upper math grades.
So when we're talking about the math department, and certainly Andre could add for this discussion, it's the number of classes they're teaching. We provide some we call math lab, which would be an intervention model for the kids who need that help, as well as some academic study hall time in the area of math, and it's really through some maybe efficiencies in how we schedule that academic study time that we're able to net off a little math support. So we don't think, all of our projections would show, we don't think it would impact the regular classes.
Thank you for that explanation.
Craig, I just have a question on human resources. We employed two.
Are you on the page?
I'm sorry, page 18.
Yeah, so our share, human resources is shared.
Yeah.
So we, the town pays for the director, and we provide a supplement to that salary. We provide one of the HR people who does sort of the benefits, and we also provide the secretarial support in the town, and the town has another benefits person as well as the director. So if we shift from staffing to curriculum, just to show how this current budget has really improved the district. We have a 6-year curriculum renewal. We have art and tag, as well as secondary science under curriculum reviews, and you will see this spring some new revised documents. We have completed initial training in the readers and writers, the readers workshop approach that really is a way for the teachers to use that approach to cover all the curriculum in our language arts document. We have had some training in Writers Workshop. We will continue this effort. We have had the 3rd year of a flipped classroom professional development opportunity. Many of our secondary teachers have taken this professional development, and it has really caught on in our high school math department. We are fortunate that the board added some paraprofessionals in the area of math support, and that really has increased not only the efficiency but the breadth of which we can provide math intervention at our elementary schools. And we have also looked at a better approach to bring all of our elementary schools together from a professional learning community sense, and we've changed from having all the teachers leave a building to join a different building to maybe having just the coaches of all 3 schools come to one building, and that saving of all the transport has really helped make that hour after school a week much more beneficial.
Question for you. I know we have a different type of testing program now, but when will you, or will you be able to get kind of a handle on the impact of the increased support that we gave for math?
Sure. So
the impact in terms of test scores.
Yeah. So last year, from a statewide sense, we piloted the SBAC assessment. We really didn't get district-wide results because it was really a pilot. This is the first year statewide that we'll be implementing that statewide assessment. So we're moving from the CMT analysis, which we've, I think, done a effective job educating you all around that metrics, to this new assessment for which we need to then learn what this metrics would be and how we fare. That would be one way. And then the other way is through our own internal assessments, we can sort of see and measure how well we're doing, and are we having more students on grade level, and we could probably give you some anecdotal data, meaning internal data, within a year, and certainly we would have a baseline data when it comes to the SBAC, where then we could measure and maybe compare to other districts.
There was a gap between the math and what I would call English, right?
Correct.
Simple terms.
For support.
We would hope that we would see the test scores in the math start to move up closer to what we were doing in the language arts.
That's correct. So we can, as I said, bring you more of that data after a year of fully implementing this. Moving forward to what this proposed budget would help support, you will see a slight increase in curricular development, primarily to cover the costs, contractual costs for working on curriculum in the summer. You'll see an increase in new texts, which will be, when we say text, it's not only textbooks, it's online resources, and it's other instructional resources we bring to the board. And when we have a phase-in approach for science, as well as our elementary social studies, in addition to, as I alluded to with Dave, our business and tech ed, we're seeing a little increase in those resource lines. And you'll see a slight increase in the new text supplemental, and that new increase is really to continue the support of the Reader's Workshop model by an ever-increasing of each elementary classroom library, so that the students have a wealth of books to choose from and hopefully love, and just continue in the program.
And Craig, because we're changing the curriculum, it's because of the Common Core, right? Correct?
The change in our approach certainly is highly aligned to the Common Core, and it's really, as Greg alluded to, if our reading scores were here, we really haven't seen them get to the next level. We're hoping with this new approach that there will be an increased rigor, there will be more eyes on the books, so how do you get better at something? Through that practice, and we're hoping that we'll kind of get our next bump up to reading. I know when Greg mentioned it was to try to get our math scores up, but we're never happy with just this level. We always want to increase it.
Because all this is mandated, I mean, it's too bad there aren't grants out there from the government in order to cover some of these costs.
But Joe, the other part, it's more than just the Common Core. You have a cycle of every 6 years.
Right.
So before there was any Common Core, you as a board were updating the curriculum. There have always been new standards here in Connecticut. That's always been in place in Connecticut for a very long time.
So here's the curriculum revision work. You can see the top 3 are the curriculums that we're working on currently, and by the timeline, hope to bring you this spring, and you'll see the 4 areas that ambitiously we're going to begin the curriculum revision on. And that can be found on page 69 in your budget book. Now, obviously with curriculum comes professional development, and really the only way to enhance an organization is through learning. So this year we are proud to say that we've offered opportunities in new learning in the areas of Reader's Workshop, Writer's Workshop, flipped classrooms, workshop for and support for our coaches so that they can more effectively help our teachers, training in the area of school security and safety for our administrators with the cooperation of our police department. Training for IT, and you'll hear about that at some of the school level presentations next week. Continued support with our coaches through first aid and cooperation with regional PD. In the upcoming year, this budget, you will see an increase in professional development, and that's really saying that even though we've given an initial sort of overview of the reading workshop approach, we really want to go deeper in how to effectively do interactive read alouds, how do you effectively conference, what are those mini lessons, what's the best and effective way to do word work components for Reader's Workshop. We also want to chip into the Writer's Workshop and do similar deeper dives into those areas. And so we are asking for a slight increase in those professional development needs as we move away from here's the teacher book to empowering the teacher with all the tools on how to meet the needs of the students. We need to provide that professional development. If we look at page 30 on contracted services, as Bob mentioned and Jerry also alluded to, instructional service increase is really around the teacher of the blind contractual obligations. I talked about the professional development and curriculum development, which are also Board of Ed budget priorities. And when we talk about the other purchase services going down, this is where we have one of our own teachers who has a BCBA certification, and that's going to result in lowering some contracted services in the area of autism. And we also have a decrease in the magnet school services. And as Bob mentioned, legal services will continue to be level funded. Going to tuition, again, a busy slide as I'm looking at this. This can really be found on page 42 of your budget book, in case your eyes are like mine. That would struggle a little bit. And you'll see that for FY16, the number of students for the magnet schools, Kathy Balone will talk about the special ed components of this slide, but when we actually look at the 4-year average enrollment for schools, we are projecting some decreases in some enrollments. And so that would explain some of these changes in each school's tuition. When we talk about magnet school tuition, it's really enrollment driven, and so that's why you do get these ups and downs. Other purchase services, as Bob alluded to with district travel, we follow the IRS guidelines. Teachers, and that's in several components, teachers that travel to provide support to multiple schools, are maintainers who use their own vehicles, and are admin traveling outside the district for meetings. Under field trips, as Jerry mentioned, Clark Lane Middle School will be adding 2 new activities Jim will speak about a little bit later, and Andre will speak about some music opportunities as well at the high school, and that accounts for the field trip. And under contracted services, Bob talked about this is one of those realignments, so this is where the uniform allotment is, and our budgeting software, our ADS increase would also be. On page 51, I just want to alert you to a change. TSATs have historically been an opportunity that parents would elect if their child wanted to partake that on a Saturday. Obviously, our high school always works with children to encourage that. But next year, we've been notified by the college boards that the Saturday option will no longer exist, and so it would only be in on a Wednesday, which has been an opportunity that we could have partaken for a few years. We haven't, because we've made it an option. Because now it's a Wednesday, we feel that all of our students would benefit by taking the PSATs. I think that would be another way to check how our high school program is being, it is as a checkpoint, a universal screen. And so Waterford High will administer the PSATs to all 10th graders. And for this year, those 11th graders who may not have taken it as an option. And we built in a cost for about $15 a student. When we look at textbooks and library books, I've talked about the increase in text already, and as Jerry alluded to, we had Matt Padarak, our librarian at the high school, do an audit of all 5 libraries. And when we say an audit, what does that mean? It looks at the circulation of the collection, so how often are books being taken out compared to the total collection, and the age of the books relative to when they were purchased. And we've found that our elementary libraries almost have, their circulation is almost at 100% if you think about how many kids are actually taking out books on a regular basis from a weekly perspective. The age of the collection is in the 20 to 25 year old, and so for all of our elementary schools, there's a modest increase of $1,000 to the library budget. You may note that the books printed might not show exactly Oswegatchie at that same level. That was a typo. So all 3 elementaries will have that equal enhancement. And when we look at the age of the collection for middle school and high school is a little older, but they're using a lot more online databases to complement that. So there's some increase in the high school library to support those online databases. And the middle school is right now in a pretty good stance. So that's the increase that you see in library. The other supply account increase is the 2 activities that Jim will be speaking about, volleyball and swimming, and the materials and supplies needed. Dues and fees. This is an area we continually look at closely, and we really see which subscriptions, which memberships provide the best return on our educational investment. And so what's listed up here are the dues and fees that the district uses.
Do you have the BJ's account where you get money back? Is that the kind?
We do. So we have the BJ's wholesale membership because our culinary department and our food service do use that.
And you'll get money back. Because I thought it was more than the $60.
It's the membership fee for the online. If you're asking if we've signed up to have Waterford,
it's a little bit more money, but you get a certain percentage back for every dollar that you spend. Yeah, with the card. I have that. I get sometimes every 6 months I'll get like $60 back. So it might be worth looking into.
Thank you.
I mean, I probably don't buy as much as the school does, so you probably get more. Just a little bit.
So that's something good. Thank you, Jody. Grants. We use our federal funds, which is really the funds provided through the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, more recently known as No Child Left Behind, but always known as either Title I or Title II. Really, we use those monies to partially fund our reading and math support teachers' salaries, and to partially fund one of our kindergarten teachers, and to provide some professional development monies. And all of that is offset throughout the budget in the various accounts. And if I can ask you to turn to page 91. So this page used to have a little more data when we had CMTs and CAP data as well, because we're in the statewide transition. We don't have that, but we do have data that I think is worth celebrating. So if we look at our SATs and our AP, I just want to remind you that our SATs are the highest score in 5 years, and 87% of our test takers for advanced placement are scoring a 3 or more on AP exams, which really shows an understanding of the material. And if you can then look at pages 92 to 96, we often find, how do we know we're doing well? And we've taken some time to really look back at the 13-14 school year in the area of academics, service to others, athletics, the arts, technology and communication, and our own educational programming, and really acknowledge all of the outstanding work that our students and our teachers have done. And I'm very sort of humbled by all of the great work that you really see on those pages. Covering enrollment, so page 97 through 99. We talked about the class sizes, but just in general, we're looking at a slight decrease of students in the elementary, an even slighter decrease at the middle school. And the high school, it's a little hard to predict because we have been doing some good transition work. So, on the most conservative answer, it would be a slight decrease, but we'll see how that goes for an overall, reduction of 70 students district-wide. And then looking forward, the next level of work for the district in the areas of curriculum, instruction, and assessment are shown on this page. So, if there's any questions?
I just have a comment that I was pleased with all of the areas where we look to reduce, and this is an excellent budget keeping in line with the guidelines from the long-range fiscal planning. I was very pleased to see an increase in the professional development line. I think that's money very well spent, and it's good to see that there. So thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of questions on the tuition side.
Sure.
I'm curious about what Mason Hale is.
So that's one of the, as New London turns into an all-magnet district, that is one of the STEM schools that's on the south end or the 3rd district of New London that last year turned into a magnet school.
Okay. And on the middle college high school, it looks like the budget is being reduced significantly.
Right. So
how did you figure?
Initially had 3 students who attended the middle high magnet in Norwich at 3 Rivers, and we looked at the enrollment this year, and we're finding 1 student, and with the age of the student, we're not really thinking there's going to be much more. But enrollment is tricky. I mean, it's kind of like weather forecasting. It's not a perfect science.
School, we find out after the student is enrolled. It's a surprise. So we're not aware through our pipeline that anyone's planning right now, but that could change.
Makes it hard to budget for.
It does. Very hard.
So I was very happy when some of these enrollments turned out to be better.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Ed.
want to start off with some IT accomplishments since July 2014. In fiscal year 15, the budget supports the last year of the currently approved tech plan, and here's what we've accomplished on the school side. And you can find this also on page 127 in the book. We refreshed the Quaker Hill technology. That school was due for a refresh. It had 6-year-old computers. We introduced virtual desktop environment, new machines for the Promethean computers, displays, and some regional printing, and also a mobile lab. So that school has been refreshed. We improved the Wi-Fi system at Clark Lane to support increasing usage and piloting BYOD. We actually put like an access point in every single classroom in that school, so it's pretty robust. Continue to build on the anytime, anywhere, expanded computing environment to support more students, allows them to work from home and anytime. We redesigned the telephone call flow in the schools to leverage the fiber optic network, and since we've completed all the schools with IP phones, we're able to basically shut down some plain old telephone lines at the elementary schools and redirect them to the central office. So we save each one of those lines is $30 a month, so some more savings this current year on that. We integrated student ID badges with security, allowing them to access the doors at the high school between the cafeteria and the auditorium. That was a security concern. And we implemented a program called Schoolgate at a few of the schools that it's basically a pilot. We plan to roll it all the way out soon, but we implemented it at a couple of schools. Actually, the 3 elementaries, and it basically screens visitors and manages the visitors that come and go from the school building. And finally, we installed a new computer lab at Clark Lane School.
And can cell phones be used everywhere in the high school? Are there any dead spots?
There are dead spots, yeah. But for cellular, there's dead spots, but they're Wi-Fi covered 100%.
Dead spots at my house, too.
As you know, the tech department also supports the town with their IT needs. Like Jerry said earlier, it's a shared service that we provide. Here's some of the accomplishments. We upgraded the town infrastructure to support new technologies, especially in the police department. Excuse me. We installed a new IP phone system for the entire town, community center, police, all the departments, town hall. We deployed new police department car data technologies for better data collection and improved efficiency. And upgraded some core systems there at the police also. And we are currently working on a new and improved town website that is long overdue for replacement, and it's going to kind of match the school website as far as the ability for departmental updates on a timely manner and better management. For the upcoming budget, fiscal year 16, we know we need to be financially mindful and submit a level-funded budget. Also, we know we have a new technology plan that will need to be submitted and approved by the State Department this June. So some of the needs I listed here are improving the infrastructure to support changes in learning, constantly changing. We're able to keep up with that. Anytime, anywhere learning, moving to cloud-based, web-based systems. It's all about collaboration in the classroom now, so we're trying to make sure we have everything they need in place, and we're expanding BYOD. Another big thing that we need is the technology refresh at Oswegatchie and Clark Lane. We're addressing computer systems that are 6+ years old at those locations, so that's in the budget. And we're also pursuing a couple of grants at this time that should come around for hopefully some funding next year. And finally, on the town side, we're addressing some of their older technology in some of their departments. Their computers are extremely old on the town side, and we're trying to help them out. Here's a graph kind of showing the equipment budget since 2004, and as you can see, it shows pretty high, and you'll notice a small increase for fiscal year 16. If you take a look at it, you can see that it comes way down during the construction phase, construction era during that 5-year period, and that's because we were funded by the construction projects. So now we're kind of realizing that we need to maintain that investment, and therefore the budget is up by $40,000.
Time to replace.
I want to make sure everybody understands what E-rate is. That was one of the grants I was talking about. It's actually a federal program, and it funds schools and libraries for telecommunications and internet access. So we've been leveraging that from the day I started working here, and it's changing. They're moving away from supporting telephones to funding wireless projects for schools. So we want to leverage that program as best we can, and we plan to apply for that for Quaker Hill School in fiscal year 16 to get their Wi-Fi up to speed, kind of like we did for Clark Lane. So, and moving on to the equipment line, it's on page 73 in your book. The first line item is the upgrade to the Quaker Hill Wi-Fi that I just talked about, and that requires an investment on our part of $32,000, and E-rate will take in $20,000. So we're basically getting a $50,000 project for $32,000, and that will take care of it. Get Quaker Hill up to speed with their wireless system. And then we have the items in bold are the new ones. So like I said before, the Oswegatchie School refresh is in there. The Promethean boards at Clark Lane, Promethean board computers, that is, not the boards themselves. We have a Chromebook pilot going to Quaker Hill School, a cart full of Chromebooks, and also a D-Bot, which is a robotic project for Quaker Hill School. The next line is the network operating software, and that's on page 52 in your books. The only increase here is for $157 for School Due, which is a program we use to manage our help desk.
That's due to a rate increase, right?
Yes. So this is level funded pretty much. Network operating software is software that's used just on the back end to Microsoft and networking software. The next slide is school software, also page 52. This software is used to support student databases, student progress monitoring, HR department, emergency communications, and our website, other items. And again, I bolded here the increase to drivers, and there is an increase in this line went from 119,000 to 134, and that is due mostly to unfunded mandates. We have certain testing programs in here. We have the school gate is in here for visitor check-in, and also some assessments. The next slide is curriculum software. Each year during the budget process, my staff reviews the curriculum software subscriptions for function and usage. We've added some, but also removed some for overall savings in this category. The next slide is internet communications on page 36. And the savings, there is savings in this category of $7,000. That savings reflects the usage of E-rate reimbursement that I talked about earlier. This line is basically fiber that connects all our schools and forms the school's network. And back in 2007, 2008, we spent $124,000 here because we we had no, we didn't have the funding that we do today, and we didn't have the fiber actually, so it's come down quite a bit over the years. The next slide is support, which is on page 30. This account uses support, special expertise required to maintain the system. So even though we have a staff of 6 people, there's times when we need to call in special experts because basically our infrastructure is worth about $5 million, and there's sometimes we run into problems where we have to call in certain people. So I have that broken out here. It's level funded from last year. The next slide is repair on page 59 in your book. We budget each year to address annual repairs to our equipment and infrastructure. Again, this small amount maintains the millions in equipment and infrastructure we have in the district. So this is actually for parts and pieces that are out of warranty versus actual consultants coming in. And I have a slide here for a summary of IT work, and it just shows, trying to give you an idea of how many jobs we do and work orders and hours spent on the jobs.
Isn't that amazing?
All my techs put in their work hours for what they do.
I had no idea you did that.
And the town, the town is have a smaller piece of this, but it is still significant.
Well, that's what I meant for the town. I had no idea that you did that much.
Almost 500 work orders.
Yeah.
Why is it going down?
The number of orders maybe went down, but the hours on the town side went up probably, right? And then on the board side, the job.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what we want, right? I think it's dropped down.
Well, and on the town side, some projects were very big. When you're talking about implementing a voice over IP phone system for the entire town, it's one work order, but it equates to many labor hours. When you're talking about significant upgrades in the police department, you're talking about enhancements in our 911 service. So one work order, but that's a 24/7 service that's a critical function that requires many hours for our IT staff to make those upgrades and not have any service any hiccups in our 911 system.
It's still less hours though overall.
Less hours on the towns.
So you had both.
Right, if you look at both.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It is.
But it's one of those things you can't really predict. I mean, it could go up, it could go down. It all depends. The town comes up with projects, and we just jump on them. And some years they have more projects, and other years they don't. Here's a summary of the technology account for the budget. Going back to the slide, we talked about the E-rate, which is the overall increase here is $38,000, and that basically reflects the E-rate project for Quaker Hill, the wireless project we want to do, which is E-rate funded. So you do have to pay 60% of the project, but E-rate will kick in 40%. So basically what I'm saying is this increase in the budget basically reflects that us needing to leverage that E-rate project. Any questions?
Sure.
I think that the last slide, the summary of the work, probably answers my question, but I'm going to ask it anyways just because I want to be 100% clear. Our technology department is the only one for the entire town. So the 6 people that work in your department do everything.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So when we had just our own, the town had, every department had different tech support. And back 12 years ago or so, we made a deliberate merger where we created the director position, a certified network engineer, a help desk, and so, there's the town picks up some support, like our help desk, but it's a joint service, just like maintenance, where we have one department to service both the town and the board.
And HR, similar to HR.
And similar to HR.
Dovetail on that, what I've found is oftentimes the projects, whether they're town or board are related, Jay and his department are together, like background chief and the police department telephone service requires electricians and other people besides the IT people, so they both end up needing the daily routine to go do those things in the daytime, so sometimes overtime is occurring on our side, so it's a joint effort.
So we're giving you a lot to digest tonight. And,
yeah, just one question on the curriculum software. Are you guys able to monitor like how often kids are logging on to those programs?
Yes, certain ones. So we have one of our employees actually is responsible for installing all this curriculum software, maintaining it, maintaining the licenses, and she actually goes in there and can tell how much certain software is being used, especially the ones that are online and cloud-based, because those have that built-in capability. Most of it we can tell.
So the ones you can't tell, how do you decide if it's being used or not? By asking the teachers?
Yeah, talking with teachers.
as a team, we reviewed every one of these during the budget process. And part of that review was going back to the schools and really speaking not only with teachers but also with students around the viability and the value of the various pieces of software. You'll notice some changes from last year, and that's really due to the feedback on the usage and how effective that software is. And there's some enhancements in here, but really at the expense of removing something that wasn't as good as we thought, or it really kind of expended its time.
So an example would be Study Island provided some math support, which you've heard about Khan Academy. That's free. We can, our middle school math tutor was piloted both for middle school students, found the Khan Academy was much more engaging. It's free versus a subscription cost. And when we do our, you see it as NWEA or math testing, our universal screen, we can actually plug in that sort of that screen set point to put children in at the Khan Academy correct level, and as a way of doing that math intervention for middle school, we're finding that highly effective, and for us, it's a no cost.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Ed. Are there any public questions now? I don't believe it.
Bill, usually start here. I have only 15.
In the electrical supply, when you're doing the bidding, do the bidders have to be qualified by Pura?
I'm not sure if they're qualified by Pura. I know World Energy has them pre-qualified, and they have a list. That's a question I can ask them.
Well, basically, I didn't think that that you couldn't be a supplier in the state of Connecticut unless Pura qualified.
And that's
therefore,
probably
you
correct.
wouldn't be eligible to bid on your reverse bid. That's just throwing that out there. Because if this is a program that's universal across the United States, not necessarily all those suppliers are eligible to serve Connecticut.
Right. So this firm that we're using, World Energy, is based in Massachusetts and has done business in Connecticut for years. So
I'm just saying that's check on that.
yeah, point well taken.
Martha?
From a revenue, but for the last 6 years, we have been using the issues in Southwest and West States related to our parent safety and it's offered during the school day. And you're offered the option for it, but if you just opt not to take it, and they go through their regular classes and the kids are taking it on their last.
And so, respectfully, we talked about that, Andre and myself, and we figured that we would like to see all sophomores take it, and that would be a universal screen that we could then use to help our 11th and 12th grade sort of guidance for our faculty. When it's an option, you can't get that 100% screening. So Martha's very correct. That's a viable way. We just feel we would like to use that as a screening. And if we require it for all, you heard Martha very carefully saying it's an option. And those people who don't would then have an alternative setting for a normal school day. That's one possibility.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Well, we meet next Thursday on the 12th to complete the review of the budget. At that time, we'll take a look at special education. Each of our cost centers related to the elementary, middle school, high school. They will also be presenting the buildings and grounds budget at that time. We'll take a look at the athletic budget as well, and then have some discussion in regards to any revisions that you would suggest for this proposed budget.
Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Is there a second? Anybody? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much for coming, everybody.